now at a beautiful old roller mill, grain mill, which made flour from wheat and corn. It's a beautiful old stone building, built in 1760. It was owned by the Ressler family until 1977. Just love these old mills. They're so cool looking. Right along the creek here. Now this sign says earliest grain mill on this site was established. This says 1730s. This was built. But then it says 1760 on the actual mill. So regardless, that's a long time ago.
The first thing he did was put a sawmill on the back of the mill as another way to get people to come to the mill itself. You have corn, you have flour, and now you have a sawmill. So you can do 3 different things here. About 1840, he saw himself ahead enough that he built the brick house that's cat a corner across the street. He put his brother Sam in half of it, and he opened a country store in the other half. So now you got 4 reasons to come here.
Wow.
Meanwhile, he's cutting his logs and he's hiring millwrights to raise this building to the 4 stories that it is today. Some of these beams are 34 feet continual length because they were cut in his sawmill. Around 1855 or so, he decided, time to build my wife a new house. And he built the house next door. Put his sister in the house across the street, moved his family over to that house. Unfortunately, about 19...
Story of a community pillar powering the local economy.
I know the mill and the mill knows me.
Milling has long been a part of Pennsylvania's story, with the first known mill at this site established before 1740. Pennsylvania is home to a significant number of mills. Most of these have been converted or torn down, but the Mascot roller mill still runs. Mills served as economic and social hubs for their communities, and the mill at Mascot was no exception. Purchased by William Ressler in 1865, it is an important chapter in the story of Pennsylvania milling, and has undoubtedly contributed to the solid societal foundation seen in the local community. 3 generations of Resslers operated the mill in 1877. It provided an in-demand service for farmers for cornmeal and animal feed, and eventually shipped flour to far-flung customers in the eastern U.S. Mills were commonly chief economic and social centers throughout history, but the Mascot Roller Mill became an even more prominent community center after Jacob Ressler successfully petitioned to have the mill designated the town post office. After Annie Ressler suggested the name Mascot to the postmaster general,
We always say the mill office is pretty dirty, and my father would say, I knew that before you came.
Jacob and Annie Ressler had 8 children and no grandchildren. W. Franklin Ressler was the youngest and the last operator of the Mascot Mill. Immediately upon waking, he would put on his shoes and run check on the mill.
There used to be an old Amish man come to the mill, a big beard, and I always like to see him come, for he'd give me a nickel.
There's a gate control that opens with ears the protection around the turbine. Now the turbine is protected by something we call a wicket gate. Think of it like a Venetian blind. When I open it, the water can come in the head race, come down and smack into that turbine and have it spin. Okay, hi guys, sign in and come on, join the tour. That's what makes it go.
Okay.
Now the turbines are sitting on a tiny little barren. It's called lignum vitae. Basically translates to the tree of life. It's a South American wood. And I'm gonna let you hold it. In 1890, if you had a commercial building, you could ask the Postmaster General if you could have a post office. And it made perfect sense to the miller to bring people here to make them buy stuff. Let's have a post office. So he asked the Postmaster General. The Postmaster General said, sure, you can have the closest 25 Amish families around your mill, and they can come here to get their mail. And that's what they did. We were on the Star route. That meant that twice a day, a buggy would stop outside, bring in the mail, dump it on the floor, sort through, pick out the stuff that was for here, take the stuff that wasn't, and go again on his merry little way. And then the people in the surrounding area had to come to the mill to get their mail. Now, this is here because when we sent out our large orders, they were always in barrel system. So 1 stone was 14 pounds, 14 stones is 196. That's what had to be in your barrel. It took till after World War II till we went to the 100-weight system. The only used for bread, not for pies, for cakes, for soft pretzels, for donuts, for cookies. You can't make bread with soft winter wheat because it doesn't have enough gluten in it. So if he wanted to sell to his customers something to make bread with, he would have to contract North, South Dakota, or Minnesota, have them send it down to him in barrels, and then he could in turn put it in his bag and sell it out of his office as his bread flour. The last remnant of our grinding stones. Our grinding stones were imported from France. They came across as ballast in the ships. It was actually a really hard stone. When it got here, they would shape it, put it around, put bands on it to keep it, and then tool the lines that they needed to make it work. That is actually a runner stone, so it should be flipped and have a base stone underneath it. But if you had the stones that came from France, they would last you 4 or 5 times longer than the stones that you got locally.
Wow.
Nowadays, we have to buy our corn. Back in the day, the farmers would get their kids to go out, pick up the ears from the corn, bring it in the house, and then they would shuck it. And when they had it, you guys know what this looks like. Some people like coffee with 2 creams and 2 sugars, and other people like coffee totally black. It's the difference in the flavor that you wanted. So when they got the corn dried to their satisfaction, they would let the kids take it off and put it in a big bucket, and they'd send the bucket down here to Franklin for him to make cornmeal. Now this is an attrition mill. An attrition mill is also called a burr mill. It means it has 2 plates. They run backwards of each other. You can set them really fine for meal. You can set them further apart for chicken feed. However you set them is what you're going to get. If you watch, every chute like this that's straight will take things up. Every one that is curved will take things down. So I'm putting the corn in there. It's going to go down into the mill. That's going to drop it down and send it upstairs to a shaker that's going to separate the good stuff from the bad stuff and send it back down again. This is where it will come up at. You'll be able to see it, okay? Now, if you're coming up? everything else. All right, when we're ready to harvest it, and we sow our wheat in the fall, so it winters over around here, starts to grow in the spring. About July 4th, we're ready to cut it. When we cut it, it comes to the mill for him to buy it. He had to get 1,000 pounds of wheat and store it upstairs on 2 floors in storage containers, so he had enough to run to keep things going for the whole year. Now, we have 4 roller stands. This is what hard winter wheat looks like. Now you can see the difference. Can you see the difference? Yeah? Uh-huh. Yep. Wow. And like I said, if he wanted bread flour, he would order it from North or South Dakota or Minnesota and get them to put it in barrels and send it to him. This is what we would do. And he worked really hard to get customers all up and down the eastern seaboard that would make pretzels or pies or cakes or anything, schleppfries, you know, good stuff. So wheat bran wasn't good for you. So our first roller stand is actually set up to remove this. Our next roller stand is set up to remove the wheat germ because they didn't think that was good. They would take these 2 products and sell them for animal food. What everybody around here wanted was pure white flour. Now, it didn't have a lot of vitamins and minerals, but this is what they thought was the best thing. And coming from different places, no matter what happened to it, it had to go through a bolter or a sifter. This was the final process. There are 50 of these. They start out really coarse and they get really fine, and they shape like this. There's a brushes underneath it. The bad stuff goes out the hole. The good stuff is caught right underneath. Franklin would be very, very conscious of going around using something he called a flour slick, and he would take a scoop of flour out of his bag or out of his barrel, put it on here, smooth it out, and look to make sure that there was nothing on there that wasn't just pure white flour. Because he was worried one of those sifters would get a hole, and if it did, stuff would come through, and then his customers would not buy his product. Because
beautiful old world charm here at the old Ressler mill, which was converted in 1906 to the rollers that we saw right along this beautiful creek in Lancaster County, not far from Intercourse, PA.
So the rain barrel collected rainwater. They used the water to water their garden, and the girls wrote about how soft their hair was after washing in rainwater.
That's great. I love that.
And there's a root cellar that was dug out with a dirt floor. There's a small trough in the front corner where some spring water runs through. That will keep it quite cool, about 50 degrees year round.
Yeah.
Great storage for some fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Even crocks of milk, butter, and cheese would be placed in the cool spring water.
That's like your old refrigerator back then.
Absolutely. And in the early days, they came out here on the porch to pump their water. The trough drains into the tail race of the mill, so the slip of water closest to the house is the water that exits the mill after operating the equipment, running parallel to Mill Creek for about a quarter mile until they meet up again. All the heat that you generate by cooking and heating water for household purposes, you keep it out of the house in the warmer months while you lessen the fire danger to your house at the same time. Now, the summer kitchen was heavily damaged, not by fire, but by wind back in the 1940s. They rebuilt it, but we don't know that they ever used it as a functioning summer kitchen from that point on, so today we use it as display space.
Okay.
Second floor.
Okay.
You got a photo
Second floor.
there. Right. It'd be soft brick.
Soft brick from Lancaster
Soft
County.
brick. Right. So they would paint it to seal it
Okay.
and to protect it. And in this particular case, they wanted the mortar to show, so that's why they painted the white lines.
It's incredible. Pretty incredible tour I just took of this house. Lots of the artifacts inside from early, before the Civil War. Incredible old world charm. And it shows how people lived back in the mid to late 1800s and then the early 1900s. This is the outdoor kitchen. Incredibly beautiful property. Right along this creek. As we took the mill tour, that was incredible too. Just stunning beauty here on this late August afternoon. Pretty interesting how people lived back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. No electricity. Now we're going to check out this incredible barn. Beautiful. I'm told that barn was here also. Here we are at the chicken house. We are definitely in Amish country, Lancaster County. There's some hex signs. Love these old rustic barns. Not sure, but I'm guessing this was originally built in the 1700s, along with the mill. This whole property, about 20 acres. Beautiful old Lancaster County. This is the stable where you keep your horse. It was good living back in a bygone era. We are in the garden. Old Amish farm right across the street. Was in the photo, at least from the 1920s or 30s, that was in the house. Actually, this whole, all of these buildings were in the early photos, turn of the century, 1900 or earlier. Some nice handmade Amish products right across the street. Love these bird feeders. Some nice horseshoes. I'm gonna buy a couple of them.